Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining us for this segment, we have Dusan Kovacic. He is the Chief Investment Officer with Rockaway Blockchain Fund to discuss the current VC landscape and where investors are finding the most value in Web3. Dusan, it's great to have you with us. Welcome to Trade Talks.
Hi, Jill. Thanks for having me.
Increasingly, Web3 projects are looking for support from VCs and partners beyond the provision of capital to areas including talent acquisition and engineering. What value do VCs bring to this space?
And I think that's a very good question, but it also depends on the market cycle. Yeah, in the bear market cycle we are right now, even capital is I would say scarce resource than what it was like 1 year ago. So in the bear market, like we are in right now, if you can be quick on decision making, that's very valuable if you have a capital to invest. In a bull market, the tables typically shift very quickly, where like brand signaling or, for example, like helping with research or engineering or providing infrastructure is also is critical at that time.
In line with the current bear market, VCs are now more conservative with their investments. What is the most important thing CEOs must understand right now?
I think it comes down to like having the amount of funds to survive. I would say prolonged a period of either limited cash flows or inability to attract significant amount of capital, and that can be either leveraged by either raising funds now when the market is still okay, or by cutting down on the cash flows or on the expenses.
What's the longer term value prop of Web3 technology?
I think that also comes down to where we are actually looking. It all started down with the Bitcoin as was the initial currency, but right now it's all about automation of financial services, and these financial services are becoming global and accessible and operating 24/7 without the human interaction. So I would say that's number one. Then it also the Web3 also touches the, I would say, consumer space, especially in context of NFTs, where now it enables a digitally native self-expression. Yeah, if you look at the high-value NFTs or maybe even the mid-value, you can recognize the NFTs are associated with social profiles, which brings much more, I would say, social distribution and verification of the context than what you had traditionally on Web2 platforms, for example, Instagram.
Yeah. So, Dusan, what makes a project attractive to an investor during a bear market?
I think that's a very good question. Actually, I typically get very excited about founders that can teach me about the market more than I know. And for example, that ranges from the financial services or to the consumer. I'm particularly excited these days about NFTs, and increasingly over the last few years, the NFT market has boomed, but the whole industry was typically created. And one of the problems that I recognize, for example, right now is algorithmic valuation of the high value NFTs. For example, you have a set of CryptoPunks. The most expensive ones are told to be worth $1 million, like the alien punks. But what is the real value? Yeah, and it's actually quite a difficult problem to solve. And I'm looking for founders that have a unique, I would say, experience from, for example, they were working on AI research at Google or NVIDIA or other these high-tech companies that could be applied in the context of blockchain or NFTs. So typically you want to see an amazing track record or a good track record of historical achievements that are now brought into blockchain. And these are the founders and teams I'm very happy to support.
And what are some of the new Web3 use cases and infrastructure coming to the foreground in which RBF is particularly interested?
So for example, the NFT market infrastructure that relates to algorithmic valuation of NFTs, or for example, providing liquidity to the NFTs, or we are typically also interested in DeFi in a broader context. For example, one of the big problems in decentralized application space is that the insurance in general is not very well developed. And the traditional insurance companies cannot really assess this risk very well because the insurance is of a new type. For example, insurance against smart contract hacks or about a protocol malfunction. So really this is one of the areas we are looking at, insurance. The second area that in DeFi particularly, which is super interesting, is derivatives. There are automated market makers, for example, options, but none of these have gained really a good traction over the course of years because they are not very capital efficient. In really the core infrastructure, we are seeing a lot of, I would say, a lot of progress recently into zero knowledge proofs. And it's really important to understand that the computation on blockchain is quite expensive, so it needs to be offloaded to another infrastructure. But given like blockchain is there to deliver trust, it also has to make sure that any other computation off chain needs to be trusted as well. So that's why like zero knowledge verifiable computation off chain in context of like layer 2s or any other design is also very interesting for us.
All right, Dusan, we appreciate the insight. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.
Thank you very much, Jill. Thanks for having me.